One of people's biggest fears of happiness is that it's selfish. And I can tell you right now, don't worry about that, not for a minute. The most generous people I know in the world are also the happiest people I know in this world. When you're happy, you want to share it. When you follow your joy, Alyssa, it's not always rational. And indeed, Carl Jung said that if you're going to follow your vocation, you may well have to follow an irrational factor. So sometimes it's not always rational, but my goodness, it is always intelligent and it won't let you down. Often, the thing that we think we're not getting is often also the thing we're not giving. I'm not saying that's true every time, but I'm saying check it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll notice that your complaint about X is actually a reference more to what you're not giving, or most importantly, what you're not being. What's it like to be you when you're not judging yourself? Now, I would just say, please give that 5 minutes journaling time. Give that 5 minutes of your attention and begin to get a feeling for this is what it's like to be me when I'm not judging myself. And I promise you, if you follow that through, you'll begin to see that you don't have to be perfect to be amazing. Okay, that's level 1. Level 2.
Welcome to the Healing and Human Potential podcast, where today I'm joined by a dear friend of mine, Robert Holden, and we're going to be unpacking the power of purpose, what authentic happiness and success is. And so, just to give you context, Robert is a pioneer in psychology and spirituality. He's been featured on Oprah. He was behind the Real Dove Beauty campaign. He's coached with Google. He's been a New York Times bestseller. This man has a depth of knowledge that I'm excited to share with you on the podcast. We're going to be unpacking some of his most powerful quotes so that you can embody the transmission of what these teachings are. Get ready for a conversation that can change your life. Robert, I'm so excited to have you on. I want to do something a little different because you have such a breadth of and depth of knowledge with 14 books. There's so much wisdom. I thought it'd be fun to pull some of my favorite quotes and unpack them on the podcast so that you could really share the wisdom inside of them. So how does that sound for diving into unpacking some of your quotes here with us?
That sounds great fun. And first, may I just say what a joy it is to be with you. You're a very important person in my life. And this just feels really good to be together, Alyssa. So thank you.
I
Thank you
feel
for
the
inviting
same.
me
I'm so
on your
grateful.
podcast.
Yeah. Just backstory. Robert and I have been friends for quite a while, and I have so much respect and love for you and want to share your work in the world in a bigger way and with you, with my audience. And so here we are. But I want to dive into one of my favorite quotes of yours, which is, until you give up the idea that happiness is somewhere else, it will never be where you are. And this really ties together with one of your principles that I love, which is destination addiction. And for people that don't know what this is, it's like the idea that our happiness is found in the next job, in the relationship, and achieving the goal. And it's so important that we see that so that we start waking up from it, because we have been conditioned in our society to think it's somewhere outside of us, outside of the moment. And really, this is helping people take their power back. And also, you talk about how we are living in a culture that is obsessed with instant gratification. And of course, there's conveniences that come with modern day world, but there's also the shadow that comes with that. And you really unpack that in some of your work. And so in a culture that is obsessed with instant gratification, and I know that there's conveniences of modern day, conveniences, which I love, but there's also shadow with that. So talk to us a little bit about how you support people in overcoming some of the challenges that come with a fast results, instant gratification culture.
Okay, so this first quote really belongs to a project of mine called the Happiness Project. And I set up the Happiness Project in the UK on the National Health Service all the way back in the 1990s. My children would call those days the olden days. So this is from the olden days. But it was pretty radical at the time, Alyssa. I will say that. There weren't many psychologists studying happiness openly at the time. The focus was still more on how to be less unhappy rather than how to be happy. And the work of the Happiness Project, which I wrote up in two books, one called Happiness Now and another called Be Happy. Really, the work of the Happiness Project was to help people give up the pursuit of happiness and to start following their joy.
Mm.
Now, the pursuit of happiness um, clearly is an unalienable right. It's there absolutely in the manifesto, so to speak, of the US, and it's also something that I think all of us would uphold as a good idea to a point. Interestingly, the word pursuit means either to take an interest in or to chase.
Mm.
What I was really addressing here was that the pursuit of happiness encourages us to chase something outside of us. And once you start chasing something outside of you, I think what that does is it sets up a paradigm where you're always feeling as if you're in lack and that you're about to feel more fulfilled. But a paradigm is a paradigm, and you don't ever make any progress in a paradigm until you change the paradigm. So the paradigm for me had to shift from, instead of chasing happiness as an external, somewhere outside of you, what if you were to follow your joy? And this was the big shift in the Happiness Project. The pursuit of happiness means we're always going to be chasing, and also we're always going to be future focused. Whereas following your joy is an invitation to turn within and to see if you can connect with that joy, which is your compass, which gives you guidance, which gives you direction, which helps you to make authentic choices in your life. And that shift for me is vital if we're going to flourish and if we're going to live an abundant life. And anybody who can make that shift from pursuing happiness to following joy, honestly, that for me is the great key. And that was the work of the Happiness Project, really. When you're chasing happiness, you tend to become manic, busy, and hyperactive. And in becoming manic, busy, and hyperactive, you end up experiencing what I call destination addiction. And destination addiction is this it's really this idea that I've got to get to a destination before I can relax, before I can be present, before I can be in the here and now, before I can be even more myself, before I can be happy. And that's all well and good, except that, and this is why it's an addiction, is that when we get to our destination, and because we're living in a paradigm and paradigms don't change, as soon as we get to a destination, what do? We create another destination.
Mm-hmm.
And we're off again. And so it just becomes one destination after another where we're always hoping to be happy, but we're never really happy. And that's why in the end, we have to do something really, really radical, which is we have to make this shift from chasing happiness to following our joy. Now, that means connecting with that joy inside us. And sometimes we might be afraid that there isn't any joy inside us. But I promise you this, if you pay attention to yourself, if you pay attention to your heart, you will discover this thing called joy. And you will notice when you're following your joy or when you're not. And all I would say is, when you're following your joy, trust it. When you follow your joy, Alyssa, it's not always rational. Okay, it's not always rational.
Yeah.
And indeed, Carl Jung said that if you're going to follow your vocation, you may well have to follow an irrational factor. So sometimes it's not always rational, but my goodness, it is always intelligent and it won't let you down.
This is so good. And we're going to jump around a bit to some of your different body of work. And I'm just thinking about people because, there's a lot of people that want to have a career that's really fulfilling for them. And they want to, have, like, they're sharing their gifts. But for people that are totally lost from what brings them joy with career, what advice would you give them?
Well, there is such a thing as part-time joy. We don't have to go into 60 hours a week joy straight away. We can start by just getting a feeling for when do you genuinely feel joyful, and then commit a bit more time to that. So we don't have to set up a whole career for ourselves right away. It might be that we have a little bit of part-time joy just to begin. A small step is better than no step at all. And once you get into the joy thing and you start to maybe, some careers start out as a hobby. Some careers start out as things that we spend some time on the weekend or maybe on the evenings when we're not at work. So don't be afraid to make a small start. What I will say is once you're following your joy, you're normally connected to something bigger than you. And once you're connected to something bigger to you, then following your joy can take off, and it can take you in directions that are delightful and surprising. Also, when you're following your joy, it's interesting who shows up in your life,
Mm.
because once you're following your joy, there is some sort of, I want to call it, divine assistance that kicks in. The universe loves it when we are living an authentic life.
Mhm.
The universe can get behind us when we're being authentic. And one way to be authentic is to follow your joy. So start small.
Yeah.
Think of, and connect with those moments when you are following your joy, and follow that and see where it leads you.
I love that. And I was just looking at animals and nature and kids, and it's like we innately are joyful, like we want to play. And somehow as adults, we've gotten more serious and really bought into the limitations of the mind and fear, lack, and separation. And so when I just investigate, I'm like, life is naturally joyful without all of that conditioning. And so I love what you are inviting people to follow, that next thread. And I also know that people feel like they have to have their career be their purpose, as if like it's almost like coming from scarcity is like, what can I get from my job versus what can I give? And one's scarcity, one's abundance. And when we really shift that paradigm coming from wholeness, it's sort of like this formula that supports happiness in all areas of our life. And one of the things that you share is if you're looking for the world to make you happy, you will be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious if there was a moment in your career or what supported you in coming to this realization so that it helped you really step into more authentic success.
Yeah, thank you. Well, maybe we could go back to destination addiction for a moment, Alyssa. As an ambitious young man, I was always heading into the future, as fast as possible. I was always sacrificing now for the future. I'd heard about living in the now. Yeah, I'd read Be Here Now by Ram Dass. I was aware, that the great mystics were telling me that living in the now is a good thing to do. I was all signed up, Alyssa, except that I wasn't going to live in this now. I was going to wait until I had a better now.
The same pattern gets projected in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I just need a better now. I need my now to be as interesting as Eckhart Tolle's now. And then I'll go into the now. I need it to be as spiritual as the Dalai Lama's now, or as as interesting as Lady Gaga's now, or whoever's. Like, I just need a better now, and then I'll be there, and then I'll really do it. But of course, no now was ever enough. So I was always chasing. And actually, it was really, I think, the work of the Happiness Project that taught me that really, if you are going to live a happy life, you have to start with where you are. And you have to truly make that shift from being more journey orientated than destination orientated. So I would say, everything that I teach has come from my personal experience.
Mhm.
I didn't set out to be a teacher. I set out to be a student. And I teach what I learn. That's really what it's about. I teach what I learn, or I teach what I'm learning right now. Sometimes I'm teaching stuff that I'm growing into. I know it's there for me to do. And so that's the work. I would say, when it comes to following your joy, for instance, when I think about it now in this conversation with you, I would say, for example, in terms of career moves and also in terms of income, I don't think I've ever started out on the following your joy journey with any sense of this will be a career move, or this will make me money.
Mm.
And yet, whenever I have followed my joy, it's end up becoming part of my work and also a revenue stream. And so I would just say, please hear this. Joy is intelligent. If you follow your joy, you are tuning into an intelligence that knows a thing or two about who you are and what's good for you. The thing is to stick with it.
Ooh, I love that. Joy is intelligent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like as we're following our joy, it's like anytime we're searching for something, we move away from the source of it directly in the
Yeah,
moment. And so like the more we look for happiness, the further we are away from it. But the following of that joy, I love because you're still connected to the source of it, breaking that conditioning of destination addiction that we're encultured to really follow and
yeah.
really taking our power back. Are you a new or seasoned coach, therapist, or healer ready to step into your next level of confidence and share your gifts in the world while having a thriving, purpose filled business? If so, then I'm glad you're here because my ICF accredited coach certification program is designed to help you do just that. Drawing from 2 decades of experience, multiple degrees in psychology, and the success of building my own multiple 7-figure coaching practice, this is a culmination of my life's work. And what sets it apart is the balance between your coaching mastery and your business growth. So we ensure that you're equipped with strategies to attract your dream clients, scale your business, and achieve the income and life that you most desire. So much so that 70% of our students make their investment back shortly after halfway through the program. And so you're not only going to learn how to facilitate deep transformation in yourself, but also how to recreate that transformation with your clients, learning to lead with service and integrating cutting-edge trauma-informed tools. You'll also become part of a supportive community of like-minded coaches and mentors who are committed to expanding together. So this network will provide you with invaluable connections, support, and opportunities to expand beyond the program itself. So as you develop the expertise to stand out in a competitive industry by teaching you the techniques that have really been proven, it'll support you with monumental shifts both personally and professionally. And so if you're ready to become a confident and impactful coach with a successful business, this is your chance to take the next step towards your dreams and apply today by going to alyssanobriga.com/apply, or you can learn more with the link in the show notes. I would be honored to support you. The other quote that I love of yours, you say, happiness doesn't have to be deserved, earned, worked for, paid for. It just simply has to be accepted.
Mm.
What do you think is hard for people about accepting happiness?
All right. Well, the Happiness Project, I did a number of different lectures over the years. The most common one was a lecture called How to Be So Happy You Almost Feel Guilty, but Not Quite. It was the longest title,
Yeah.
and it was the one that everybody showed up for, because there is this sense of, hold on a minute, don't I have to deserve stuff?
Yeah.
Don't I have to be good in order to deserve happiness? Well, if happiness was a reward, yeah, maybe. If happiness was an Easter egg hunt, yeah, maybe. If happiness was an it or a thing that you had to go and find, yeah, maybe being good would be part of it, and maybe needing to deserve it and earn it would all be part of it. But let's remember, if joy is part of your spiritual DNA, if joy is already one of the fruits of your own spirit, you don't have to deserve something that's already been given to you. You don't deserve it. You choose to see it. You choose to know it's there. And when you connect to that joy, here's another reason why you don't have to deserve it, is because once you connect to joy, you also connect with this extraordinary impulse, which is to share the joy, to share the happiness. One of people's biggest fears of happiness is that it's selfish. And I can tell you right now, don't worry about that, not for a minute. The most generous people I know in the world are also the happiest people I know in this world. When you're happy, you want to share it. Yeah. Just imagine for a minute, you see this amazing sunset and you're just filled with joy. In that moment, I promise you, you're not thinking, oh my God, I hope nobody else can see this sunset. It's like you're not thinking like that. You're not thinking, why did I deserve the sunset? You're thinking, oh my God, who can I call? Who can I speak to? Who can I share this sunset with? Happiness and joy, they are intelligent, but they're also moral. They're good for us, and they're good for everybody else, because when you're truly, truly feeling that happiness, you're also feeling that wholeness that you mentioned. And when you're feeling that wholeness, the desire is to share it. So with we've messed with ourselves over the years, Alyssa. It's a great shame that we've done this, but we have told ourselves we need to deserve the happiness. It goes back a long way. It goes all the way back, as far as I can tell from my research, to the moment we forgot about the original blessing. The original blessing is something that the wonderful Matthew Fox talks about. Matthew Fox is one of my mentors. He wrote a book on the original blessing. The original blessing is the remembrance that each and every one of us was created beautifully, that we were created whole, and that we are blessed. It's what we are. We arrive in the world as a blessing. We forget about the original blessing, and then we experience something that's sometimes called the original sin. And the word sin here means the mistake. Well, what's the mistake? The mistake is we forgot we were blessed. And when we remember we're blessed, then you realize you don't have to deserve joy. You just have to tune into it. And once you're tuning into it, then you're on your path, and then you're sharing your love with people. You're sharing your presence with people. You're sharing your wisdom with people. And you don't need to feel guilty about that. That's a
Yeah,
good thing.
it's beautiful. I love that you wove in the original blessing, because I think there's a lot of religious upbringings that people feel like they're broken, and something's wrong with them and they need to
Yeah,
pay penance and do something different. And that's a lot of where the deserving comes from. I have a hard time with that word deserving, because as soon as you can deserve it, then there's another time where you don't deserve it. And we're tying our
exactly.
self-worth with our achievements or behaviors, and it's just not true. And so I love that you speak to this and then help people really wake up to their wholeness and share about the original blessing. That's so beautiful. It balances so much of the confusion in my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for people, because I want to go deeper into this, because I think that some of the deepest work is around identity, is around worth.
Mm-hmm.
And for people, because some people can hear it, I think the first step is hearing it conceptually and then starting to feel it in the heart and then living it in the gut. Like it's just this
Yes.
like integration that deepens.
Lovely.
For people
Yeah.
that want to live into this a little bit more, and I know one of your quotes is, if you think something is missing in your life, it's probably you. And I know
Mm.
you mean the real you. And
Yes.
talk to us about this, and talk to us about how we can not just know it conceptually, but really start embodying and living the truth of who and what we are.
Okay. So, yeah, if you think something is missing in your life, perhaps it's more of the real you. It's a big thing to say, isn't it? And I would say to everybody, just like you've invited us to do right now, Alyssa, don't just hear those words, with your ears. You got to see if you can take that into your heart for a moment, and also into your nervous system. Like, bring that into yourself and see, well, how does that fit for me? Is there a grain of truth in here, perhaps? Um, these sorts of um, teachings that you're offering from me, they come from my observation of myself, and I just notice that when I'm really being me, yeah, I know I'm coming from a place of wholeness. When I think I have to be something else, or when I forget to be me, that's when I start chasing, wanting, searching, hoping, trying to acquire something.
Mm.
I become acquisitive. I become transactional. I do a meditation and I hope to get something from the meditation. I say a prayer and I want something from the prayer. I go on a workshop because I want something from it. And I'm basically, it's like I've gone shopping and I'm acquisitive now. And I'm trying to grab something. What is it I'm trying to grab? I think what I'm trying to grab is a connection with myself again. Really. It's like these are the fruits of our spirit, really, that we're looking for. We hope to find them in Costco, and other places. And I love Costco, by the way. But I have to say, I think you have to do a lot of inner work before you go to Costco. I am just going to say that for a minute. When I first went to Costco, Alyssa, I tell you, I was not prepared for Costco. All of the spiritual work I'd done up to that point had not prepared me for Costco. Costco was an extraordinary experience, and remember, I'm coming from England to America, and America's already a big place, but Costco's even bigger,
Extra large.
and
Yeah.
it's like its own continent, really. And I just remember, like, oh my God, there's so many things that I need in here. I actually bought a suitcase from Costco to put the things that I bought from Costco into it to be able to take it home. Anyway, it's a long story. We should do a whole thing on
We
how
should
to
do a whole
manage
thing on
Costco.
Costco.
Because I love Costco. Please hear how much I love it. But you must do your inner work before you visit Costco. Otherwise, it's going to be expensive. Um, the great thing is I notice is when I'm in touch with that, with my heart, let's just talk about that. You're making a deliberate connection to connect with your heart each day. Immediately, I'm not as acquisitive as I was. In that moment when you're with your true nature, I think you shift from wanting to being. Doesn't mean that you don't want anything anymore, but it's just that you start with being. And when you're in that sense of being, you're also more present. And when you're more present, you're giving now more of a chance. And if you're giving now more of a chance, you suddenly begin to think, wait a minute, those mystics, maybe they were onto something. Maybe this wasn't just poetry. Maybe this wasn't just sweet talk. Maybe when I allow myself a bit more experience of my being and a bit more of now, I don't need to be so acquisitive as I was before. So there is an attunement to a sense of an inherent fullness in us that we overlook when we go out into the world. Normally, of course, we can't, it's hard to do this on our own. That's why we listen to podcasts. That's why we take the coaching programs that you're offering, for example, and the masterminds that I offer and everything, is so that we can begin to tune back into some inherent fullness within us already. But to be able to take some time, for instance, with a simple journaling exercise where you set up a conscious dialogue with your own heart and you begin to dialogue with your heart just a little bit more about how you're feeling, what you're noticing, what brings you joy, that sort of thing. Honestly, that's going to save you so much time in the future, because you're going to be more in the present and living more from that place today. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that invitation from head to heart. So most of us are overdeveloped
Yeah.
in our mind, and really sinking back down into the heart, not only when we follow our joy, like that could just be a practice in and of itself. And I hear you say journal from your heart, connect with your heart every day. But then also when you're following your joy, I know I just did an event and I love being in person with people. I love live events, and everything else when I got back to work and I was on Slack was a lot easier to navigate because I was more in my heart, more connected
Yeah.
to wholeness, more awake to the magic, and
Hmm.
felt nourished by that. I think it's also why I love Bali so much as a culture. All of, there's a lot of things that Bali represents, specifically Ubud, that I value and love, which is presence. But even the gesture of putting your hand on your heart, like as a greeting to say thank you, helps me take my awareness from head to heart. So it drops me down just by interacting as a culture. So there's different things that we can do to add to our daily life to go from head to heart. But
Yeah.
I know what you're speaking of is not just a feeling of love. It's the foundation, the fabric of life itself, which is
Hmm.
loving. And
Yeah.
that transcends any person that it's projected onto or any form. It's the formless. And so I love, if you think something is missing from your life, it's probably you, the real you.
So we could, yeah. So, and if we were to make that even more granular and more specific, it could be, for example, you're at work and you're in a really boring meeting. Yeah. Like one of those really boring meetings where you're bone tired and you think you've entered into a vortex where this meeting will never ever end. And in that moment, you could think for a moment, wait a minute, what's missing here? And maybe it's more of the real you, more of you speaking up,
Mm.
more of you making the meeting interesting. Maybe the reason why the energy is so flat is because this is your invitation to energize that meeting with something, let's say, a bit more honest than what's going on right now, for example. Or, you know, take any relationship with a friend, a partner, a child. Often the thing that we think we're not getting is often also the thing we're not giving. I'm
Ooh,
not saying that's true every time, but I'm saying check it out.
yeah.
Sometimes you'll notice that your complaint about X is actually a reference more to what you're not giving, or most importantly, what you're not being.
Mm.
Yeah, so it can work like that as well. So it's just a more granular experience of it. But again, I would say when I'm writing, sometimes as a writer, when the writing's not flowing, I'll ask myself, okay, how could I be even more authentic in this moment?
Mm.
Yeah. And then I'm putting a bit more of my true self into the writing. And then often from that moment, it might flow. Normally, what I catch there, Alyssa, is that the writing's not flowing because I'm trying to get it right. And that will block my flow because I'm trying to get it right as opposed to saying something true.
Ooh.
And if I'm saying something true, now it's happening. If I'm in a coaching session, sometimes the energy in the coaching session is a bit flat. We're doing okay, but it's not a transformative moment.
Mhm.
That'll be when I'll say an internal prayer and I'll say, just like, okay, Spirit, come on, let's go for it. What would need to happen here for a miracle to happen? And normally, Spirit doesn't say, well, they need to get their act together. Spirit will say, well, Robert, how about you?
Mm.
How about you take a moment here and go with this question or this exercise or this idea? So it's, to your point, absolutely. We're not saying more personality so much as more of our essence, bringing more of our essence into the moment. That's how we do this. I've been working with somebody recently who's got this new website up about their work. They're a coach. The website looks absolutely terrific, except that their face isn't on the website. There's nothing about them on the website,
Mhm.
and it's like they are leading with the principles of the work, which is fantastic. But I believe as well in this age, we are being asked, all of us, to show up more and more. So the dare sometimes is to step forward. Um, Sometimes people send me their 100-word bio. And I'll look at the bio and I'll say, right, how could you add a little bit more of you into the bio now? A bit more of the real you, not the you in disguise,
Mhm.
not the you that might be acceptable to the world necessarily, but the you that's not so normal, the you that's the real you. See if you could put a bit more of that into it. That's what we need more and more of now,
Mhm.
I think. It's just the world needs people who are willing to share their presence with each other. We
Yeah.
need to be more and more present.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about it comes from scarcity and abundance. It's not what can I get from this meeting? It's like what can I give? And that
Yeah.
even the criticism or the feedback that you're hearing in your head, there's wisdom inside of it if you hear the
Yeah.
nugget and then it becomes your job. Rather I have a lot of people that leave corporate and then and then they start judging the corporate structure. And I'm like, well, maybe that's as you heal whatever you were meant to learn from that experience, maybe part of the work that you go back to do is help shift the organizational structure, right? Like,
So true.
mhm, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Here's another one, Alyssa, that I often find very much along those lines. I'll have somebody come to me and they'll say, look, I'm in a situation where I'm deciding, should I leave or stay? So that's a very common situation. And context depending, but most times I will say, start by staying and show up more. Because if you stay and show up more, very, very quickly, either a door's going to open where you thought there wasn't a door, or you'll be shown another door, which is get out of here.
Hmm.
But either way, if you have shown up, even let's call it a magical 10% more, and you've just shown up more in the situation you're already in, that situation will show you whether you are meant to stay there or not. But the fact that you have shown up more in the space that you're already in bodes well for if you're going to stay there or even if you have to leave, because you're now already on a track of being more of who you are. And when you're being more of who you are, I do believe you will feel more and more that there's less and less missing from your life. You're living a more full life.
Hmm. And what I love about the principles that you're sharing and that we're talking about is that they can be applied to love or work or any area. So
Yeah.
I say a very similar thing, assuming there's no abuse, like stay so that you can heal whatever dynamic that you were looking to heal in that partnership. And then as you do that work, you completely shift. One person changes the dance and the dance changes. You may find that they elevate and grow with you, or they shift because they were a reflection of you, or like you're saying, it's very obvious to move on. Or if people are looking for a new career, they're looking for their purpose, right? What can I get versus how do I bring my values in the career I have right now? And either I enjoy that in the short term while I find something that's more aligned, or I find out that I really do like this career. It was just what was missing was, like you're saying, bringing more of me into it, more of my
Yeah.
values into it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So well said. Beautiful. Yeah. Love that,
Yeah.
Alyssa.
One of my favorites. And I just love this so much. I want people to hear it in the back, all over the round. Like, this is such a powerful quote. You say, no amount of self improvement can make up for a lack of self acceptance. No amount of self improvement can make up for a lack of self acceptance. Ooh, so good. And I know a lot of people even get into healing work or coaching work from this misunderstanding that they're broken, that they need fixing. And when they're coming from this place of lack, not only is it not true and limiting, but there's no amount of achieving or fixing that will ever resolve it, right? It's an inner
Mm,
perceptual problem. It's a perspective. And
yeah.
so really part of the work that I know that we both align with is starting from wholeness. Like in my
Yeah.
certification program, we start with wholeness and then we go into goal setting, because otherwise that lack perception just gets transferred from one thing to another. And I know that this is the heart and the depth of work that you do as well. Talk to us about this quote: no amount of self-improvement can make up for a lack of self-acceptance.
Yeah. So to want to improve your life is a great thing. And we're all of us, I think, interested in that and called to do that because I think we understand we're on a journey of growth and evolution. And so, therefore, wanting to improve our life, yeah, we're all up for that. Wanting to improve your skills in something, absolutely, big tick for that too. But when it comes to improving yourself, hopefully you can see that actually what's happening here is we're starting from a judging um, place rather than a loving place. Self-improvement, here, here's how it was for me. I was so into self-improvement. Oh my goodness. Self-improvement backed with a lot of work ethic.
Mm.
So I worked on myself properly. And I attended so many seminars and I listened to so many lectures and I did so many meditations and I went for it and I went for it and I went for it. And what I realized eventually was that no matter how much I tried to improve myself, I was always left with the feeling that there was something more to improve. So it was never complete. It was never finished. And I remember feeling this is completely unfair. This path is totally unfair. I'm working so hard. I deserve something more. Yeah. So I'm into my deserving and I'm still left with this feeling of self-improvement. I got a glimpse somewhere along the line that this self-improvement was coming from a sense of judging. And um, eventually it occurred to me one day in a meditation, I had tried everything except self-acceptance. So all of my self-improvement was apparently the payoff for it was going to be that I'd accept myself. But actually, when I really took a look at it, I realized the one thing I haven't tried yet is self-acceptance in the present moment. What would it be like if I just accepted that this is me and this is how I am? Now, I want you to know one of the first things that I noticed was how much my nervous system relaxed. Something softened inside, something inside me relaxed, and I really liked the feeling of that. I also felt that I could connect to my heart more. It was like that gesture of a hand on the heart. It was as if that happened in that moment. And I hadn't put my physical hand on my heart, but it was a feeling of, wait a minute, self-acceptance. What do you think? Could I give it a try? What would that be like? What I noticed, and I now call it the miracle of self-acceptance, is that the miracle of self-acceptance is that when you stop trying to improve yourself, your life improves. Actually, everything gets a bit better. The self acceptance starts there's two levels to it, I think. One is that here's a great question. This is level one, self-acceptance. What's it like to be you when you're not judging yourself? That's the inquiry. What's it like to be you when you're not judging yourself? Now, I would just say, please give that 5 minutes journaling time. Give that 5 minutes of your attention and begin to get a feeling for this is what it's like to be me when I'm not judging myself. And I promise you, if you follow that through, you'll begin to see that you don't have to be perfect to be amazing. Okay, that's level one.
Mm-hmm.
Level two, when we stop trying to improve ourselves and we just practice self-acceptance, there's a great surprise that comes to us. And the great surprise is that we're already whole. We're already okay. I don't have to make myself perfect. I was already perfectly made. I just forgot. I just didn't see it. And this is the great surprise. And I tell you, my prayer is that for everybody that what you're hearing isn't just words, it's a reality for you, or it's an experience you've had in your life. But the remarkable thing is, when we stop judging ourselves, when we stop trying to improve ourselves, we do connect with the place in us where we realize that we are well made. There's that modern saying, God doesn't make junk. It's like the design is good.
Mm-hmm.
The design is whole, and the design is beautiful, actually. One of my favorite prayers is by the Benedictine monk Macrina Werdiker, and her prayer is, "Oh God, show me the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it is."
Mm.
Just be willing to see who you are when you're not judging yourself. And it might be a bit blurry to begin with, but I promise you, if you really look without judgment, you will discover the wholeness is there, the beauty is there, the love is there. That's the great surprise. It's a big dare. It's a big dare to give up self-improvement, because it sounds like everything's going to go wrong if you give up self-improvement. It sounds like you're giving up on the race, but there is a miracle here on offer for all of us. And it's self-acceptance is a risk worth taking. That's all I'll say. It's a risk worth taking.
Yeah. And it ties back to the original blessing,
It
right?
does.
Rather
Yeah.
than thinking that there's something wrong with me. And, I know for one thing that I was having a hard time accepting within myself was the part of me that wanted to be accepted by others. And
Mm,
so I used to judge that part of me. I used to try to heal that part of me away. And the only thing that ever actually worked was realizing that it was a part of me, not the truth of me, and that by embracing it, it got what it was looking for from others directly inside of me, and it softened. Like you said, the body knows, it softens. And so just being like, oh, there's the part of me that wants to be seen. Okay, sweetheart, just really embracing that just softened it. That, and I call it essence embracing ego. So I'm not
wow.
identified with that part, just like welcoming it. And so, and then from there, we still can create from, wholeness. For me, and I think you as well, like, I love being a student, I love learning, I love growing, I love evolving, but it's not coming from then something's wrong with me and I need to fix. It's now coming
Mm,
from a love. And I never want the journey of coaching and my craft and skills to ever end. And so I also
mm,
want to give people a reference point that that's possible to get to that point, or working out. It's not so that I lose weight and then I feel like I'm deserving or I'm whole or worthy. It's like it's a
mm.
game. It's
Yeah.
what can I create, or what can I, what's my edge around this, but not who I am.
And Alyssa, you're taking us, I think, into fabulous territory here, because with the invitation to accept ourselves, there is this opportunity to truly transform the way we go about our own growth. And I would say that I think, initially, a lot of the times when we go into personal growth, we're thinking about what we can change and what we can heal and what we can let go of. None of that is self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it's when we're willing to accept some of those feelings, just like you've described, you begin to get there's where you get your breakthrough. So one of mine, for example, was the feeling of not being good enough.
Hmm.
That feeling of not being good enough. Do you know, no matter what I did to pay off the ransom, no matter what I did to be able to lose it, like take a quick right and hope it would keep going straight, and I'd lose that thought of not good enough. No matter how hard I worked on it, that it just kept popping up. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. So I tried to heal it. I tried to change it. I tried to fix it. I tried to let it go. Nothing worked. Eventually, one day, again, I stopped all of that and I just said, all right, you and me together, we're obviously on this journey together. And I remember I apologized to the feeling.
Oh.
I actually said, I just want you to know I'm gonna do this differently because I've only ever tried to get rid of you. And so I'm going to apologize to you, and then I'm just going to let you tell me what it is you really want me to know. Then a miracle happened, Alyssa, and the miracle was this. The voice that told me I'm not good enough, when I really listened to it all the way through, was saying to me, I'm not good enough to do this on my own. Now, that I can work with. I'm not good enough. I didn't know how to work with that. But once I really listened to that voice and heard the whole sentence, I'm not good enough to do this on my own, it was like, oh my God, you've been telling the truth the whole time. Here was a feeling that I was trying to heal and let go of, and yet this feeling was telling the truth the whole time. Once I got with that and we were now in relationship, a healthy relationship, it's like I made a promise that please speak up anytime you think I'm trying to do something on my own. So stay with me, be with me, let's take this journey together. And anytime you think I'm trying too hard to do something by myself, giving a talk, doing a coaching session, writing, whatever, it's like you tell me. And I will promise to use your nudge as my invitation to connect with spirit more, to be open to help more, and to be guided in the moment. All of that, Alyssa, came really from the self-acceptance journey.
I love that. I love that you stopped to listen and find the wisdom within it. And now it's moving forward from wholeness, saying yes to all of you, which is
Yeah.
integrated, which is sustainable, which there's wisdom in all of it if we listen. So I love that story really highlights that.
Mm,
And
mm,
and it brings me to this quote that you have that I wanted you to speak to, which is independence is not a strength, it's a wound. Independence
mhm.
is inspired not by love but fear, and not by wholeness but aloneness. Talk to us more about this.
This is big stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
I should have known, Alyssa. Any conversation with you is like really, really super like this. So independence. Independence isn't good or bad. It's simply how we use it that matters. We will be able to look at moments in our life where a good dose of independence saved us,
Mhm.
properly saved us. It gave us the courage to go our own way. Gave us the courage to get out of a certain situation. It gave us the courage to listen to our own voice. A bit of independence is a good thing. And there are times in life where we really need to know how to be independent. Abraham Maslow, really sometimes described as the father of self-actualization. He said, be independent rather of the good opinion of other people.
Mm.
So in other words, know your own mind and be aware of that and follow that. So that's healthy independence. Unhealthy independence is where we've created a rule for ourselves that we're going to do everything by ourselves. Unhealthy independence is where we set up a contract where we say that we're not going to ask for help, that asking for help is a sign of weakness, that asking for help is blasphemous, that asking for help is losing in the game or whatever else it is. Normally, when you really begin to look at a rule, you notice that a rule is a defense, and the defense is normally protecting us against an old wound.
Did you say a
So
rule? A rule is a defense?
Yeah, the rule is a way of defending ourselves.
Mm.
It becomes a defense, and it's normally against a defense against the pain, feeling the pain of an old wound.
Hmm.
Yeah. We don't really need many rules when we're living in the present, that's for sure. But also, truly, when we're coming from our wholeness, the only rule probably is be true to yourself. But you don't need rules like don't ask for help, my way or the highway. I mean, you don't need that sort of thing. So normally, the secret of very independent people is they're carrying an old wound that they have yet to make friends with.
Mm. Yeah.
That's normally, in my experience, what's going on. And and that independence, by the way, is very wise up to a point, because that independence allows you to function in the world. It allows you to begin to make that better future for yourself as you recover from a wound. But if you're going to recover fully from the wound, there will be a moment in time where you are going to be asked to be less independent than you already are. And you're going to be asked to be more open, receptive, and available to help, to love, to wisdom, as much as anything,
Hmm.
to inspiration, to grace. So independence takes a bit of work. It's good for us to see that it's not bad or it's not good, but it's more that we're either healthy with it or unhealthy with it, is the way I would put it. We are, all of us, I think, raised to a certain point to be independent. So again, there's something good going on here, but at the same time, you could say there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. And what I say to people, particularly in the Success Intelligence Mastermind, which is an opportunity for us to come together and work more in partnership than on our own. I often say that the next level of success normally requires another level of partnership. So you'll hit a point where you just realize partnership is the next thing. Now, partnership is finding a good coach, having a mentor, talking to a friend. It can be all of that, or it could be working with a fellow teacher and saying, let's combine, let's collaborate, let's try something together. That's the next level of success. On a spiritual level, it might be collaborating more with your true self, your soulful self, more with the divine, bringing that in. But you will find that often that next level of success requires another level of partnership, and that means being willing to give up the independence.
Hmm. Yeah. And as you're talking, I just am hearing childhood. So some of our conditioning and the ways that we were raised can have us harden or protect. And I love that you acknowledge the brilliance and the wisdom inside of being independent and self-reliant, but then also when it goes too far where it's hyper self-reliant out of a wound, to really be with those parts of us that need the softening, need the trust, so that we can partner with and feel
Yeah.
more organic and natural. And I think that's a great.
It's a really big deal, this one.
Mhm.
And do you know, I think I really looked at this really closely with a project called Lovability. Um, and I would be working with people who would say, look, I've been looking for love. They hadn't been looking for love for 2 weeks. It was like it was a year, 2 years, 10 years. And I began to notice after a while that, you know, if you're looking for something and you haven't found it, the chances are it's that you're afraid to find it. Now, I'm not saying that's true every time, but I'm just saying it's something to check. And sometimes, why are we afraid to find it? Well, it's because we've been hurt in the past. And I would just notice that I was talking with a lot of very independent people who were looking for love.
Mhm.
And that's when we learned to address independence as being a defense against feeling the pain of an old wound. So that's where that all thing, I think, really came from.
Yeah.
And again, by the way, this was an observation I didn't just find in someone else. I could connect with that. I noticed that feeling
Yeah.
too for me.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that your work is really an expression of your own inquiry, your own self
Mhm.
exploration.
Yeah, I don't have to go too far for my research,
Yeah.
Alyssa.
I mean, that's the best way to do this work. We enhance our own lives and we share the fruits of the labor with others. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
um, yeah, and I think just being gentle and compassionate when we see these defenses that are just innocently trying to protect us. One question you can
exactly.
ask yourself is, what do I fear would happen if I got the thing I want, if I got love, if I made the money, and just then listen inside and you will start hearing some subconscious programming that has been this push pull. I want it, but I'm scared of it. And it's
Yeah,
innocent, but once we see it, then we can shift it. Yeah.
beautifully said.
And
Hmm.
you say that you can only be held back by your past if you use it to reject yourself in the present. And so, like, the past doesn't have any hold over us unless we believe it in the moment. So it's like reminding you of your power. And one of the things, Robert, I mean, I love you so much, and we've been connected for years. And one of the things I respect most about your work and you is that you really see success as a spiritual path. When I was like, for me, some of my work unfolds in work. Right now it's around team dynamics more than anything. That's my stuff doesn't really come up in relationship anymore. I've kind of cleaned house around that. So we have to project it somewhere. And I love that you don't see them as separate. Unpack just so we can have some of your how you hold success spirituality as or success as a spiritual practice so that we can kind
Yeah.
of get a taste of that.
Oh, great. Okay. So, well, this is nice as well because, in a way, this inquiry was also what led me to you and how I got to meet you. Um, so the short story is I'm in my mid-30s and I'm running along in life, and on the whole, everything's looking pretty good. Things are going well, and I develop a little ache in my lower back. And I tell myself, oh, I'll look at it in a bit. I'll go to the doctors soon, but not yet. I keep going, and the pain turns into a bit of like a sting, like a bee sting. I still ignore it. I tell myself I will look at it, but not yet. And then one day at the end of a lecture, it was a corporate thing, leadership thing. I bent down to pick my notes up and I couldn't stand back up again. And my back had completely gone. Turned out I had a prolapse disc, two prolapse discs. So I was stopped.
Mm.
I couldn't chase the future anymore. The destination, whichever one it was at that time, I couldn't. I was stopped, absolutely stopped. Now I've since learned that stopping is a great spiritual practice. But at the time, I was hugely frustrated, and for 6 months, I had to have a walking stick, and I had to live in slow time. And during that time, I really began to address my relationship to success. And I started to think about, well, what is success really? And it was around this time that I came up with the idea of success intelligence. I needed to apply more wisdom to my thinking about what success is. I realized that my definition of success wasn't good for me. It was unhealthy. It was toxic. And there was always this delayed reward involved in the whole thing. I was never really successful now. I was hoping to be successful one day. So I promised myself that I was going to look at this, and I did, and I got a chance to do that. And soon after that experience, by the way, I had a chance to have surgery or to heal slowly, and I decided to take the slow path, which took a lot of courage. But I did do that because I listened to that inner voice that said, take the slow road here. But afterwards, I set up something called Success Intelligence. And Success Intelligence was really a boutique consultancy. I wasn't trying to be big. I was actually just wanted to do something quietly, small steps, and just to put it out there that I was offering talks on success. And really, the whole work of Success Intelligence started with this idea that your definition of success influences every other decision in your life. So, what's your definition of success? Now, when I started to talk to people about this, I realized that a lot of people were working hard to be successful, but they hadn't worked out what success is yet. And so for that reason, we started to explore success. Now, something I bumped into early on, Alyssa, was this sense that success isn't spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't even try to be successful. In fact, you should give up success and become more spiritual. But I thought to myself, wait a minute, in this lifetime, I don't want my spirituality to be this transcending spirituality. I don't want my spirituality to be the thing where I live on a mountaintop or I retreat from the world and I live in the woods. I want to visit a mountaintop and I want to go on retreat in the woods, but I actually want to live in the mainstream. I want to live in the world. I want to be here. I want a spirituality that's not afraid of the news headlines. I want a spirituality that can support me in a career. I want my spirituality to help me in my relationships, not put a bubble around me so that I don't have to do any of that.
Yes.
That was where I wanted to go.
Yes.
And with success intelligence, I was seeing how can we spiritualize success? How can we infuse success with so much love, so much joy that our success becomes our gift to others? That's what I was trying to do with success intelligence. And from there, I wrote a book called Authentic Success. Somebody called Mary Hulnick picked it up. Mary and Ron Hulnick, the two directors of the University of Santa Monica, running, of course, this extraordinary program on spiritual psychology. And I think one of my rewards for taking that inquiry, one of my rewards for writing that book was that Mary did pick up the book and she showed me her copy of it. It's all every line was underlined with a marker pen. It was lovely. But I began to meet kindred souls like Mary and very much like you, Alyssa, as well, where it was like, wait, come on, let's get involved in the world. Let's bring our spirituality into the world and let's see if we can, I say, spiritualize our purpose, spiritualize our success. That's how all that happened.
I
And
love it.
that's how we're talking to each other now.
Yeah, and I'm such a stand for that. I think I've done the monk thing before, and this life is about discovering the divine in all of it and
Mm-hmm.
integrating. And I love that you said it's not afraid of the news headlines. It's like it's here and now in all form and beyond. So I'm so grateful for the work that you do and for the deepening that you take people through your projects, through your books. And I'm just going to leave it at this quote, which I love because I think it's a powerful one. You say, one new perception, one fresh thought, one act of surrender, one change of heart, one leap of faith can change your life forever. It's now. It's this moment. And you are just such a breath of fresh air. And I love you so much. You live the embodiment of love. And I know my audience is going to want to stay connected. Talk to us about what you're up to, where and how they can stay connected.
Well, thank you. I have a newsletter. That's a very good way to begin. I write it once a week, so you can sign up there, robertholden.com. And the offerings, come thick and fast through there. The Success Intelligence Mastermind in particular, I do just want to say, Alyssa, I owe you a great thanks because you coached me and encouraged me to offer that mastermind all those years ago. We are now entering into our 9th year with the Success Intelligence Mastermind.
Yay.
So that's amazing. And it's so rich. I only run it once a year because it's so rich.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. But that program, I think, is maybe something that people would maybe be interested in because that's the journey where we get to talk about all the things we talked about now and put that into practice. So I think that's a good place to start,
Yeah.
as much as anywhere.
Yeah. And we'll put all the links in the show notes. Like you have courses and books as well. People can dive in because there's just so much wisdom that you've dedicated your life to sharing. So I just want to say thank you because my life has been uplifted and inspired by your loving leadership and paving the way. And I'm so grateful to be able to share you with my audience. Thank you so much for doing this work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a difference. And if you're finding value in this podcast, a cost-free way to support us is by leaving an up to 5-star review. It does mean the world to us. And as a thank you gift, we're going to send you one of the most powerful tools that you will ever discover. You're going to get behind the scenes access showing you how to live into your full potential without letting fear hold you back from stepping into your dreams. Just head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave a review now. You can take a screenshot before hitting submit and then go to alyssanobriga.com/podcast to upload it. And make sure to have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much magic I can't wait to share with you. And you can find all this information in the show notes below. But lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello. I'm at Alyssa Nobriga. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you.